Welcome to the Funny Books and Firewater podcast. Each week these idiots pair cocktails with comic books. You can find the cocktails, drinking game rules, and playlists on the blog at funnybooksandfirewater.com. While at funnybooksandfirewater.com, you can also find a drinking game rule to play while you listen to each episode. You can follow us at Firewatercast on Twitter, and Funny Books and Firewater on Facebook and Instagram. This is episode 161, By Chance or Providence, part of our Written by Women month.
Hey, and welcome to episode 161 of the Funny Books and Firewater podcast. This week we continue our month of women writers in comics with Becky Cloonan and By Chance or Providence, a collection of short stories that she wrote and I actually bought directly from her. So proud for me. Put a rose on my nose. We have a full group today. We're all here for the whole episode, unlike last week. Not that we don't love you, Jason. We didn't have you at the very beginning.
I was tardy.
Yes. But speaking of Mr. Jason, we have Mr. Jason.
Hi, guys. I'm Jason, otherwise known as Mr. Jason, apparently. Yes. Still a writer in Los Angeles, temporarily working in the game capture department for a trailer house. And here is your weekly WGA update. The WGA has since sued the four biggest agencies in Los Angeles for their practices of packaging and getting essentially back-end payments that are not part of their representation of the writers. So the WGA is saying that is unlawful. And as of, I want to say a couple days ago, maybe this weekend, somewhere around 7,000 agents have since fired their, 7,000 writers have since fired their agents en masse. So the number is only going to go up even higher.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we always have to follow up Mr. Jason with Mr. Todd. Mr. Todd, how are you?
Hey, I'm Todd. You can find me here on this podcast, sometimes other podcasts, but...
Like Cinema Queens.
How's that show doing?
Doing great. You're still our most downloaded episode.
Woo!
So we joke now that Chris is the fourth favorite host of Cinema Queens.
That is fantastic. Sorry, Chris. But...
Who was the third?
It would be me, Todd, Clark, and then him.
Eat it, Clark. All right. Yeah.
Oh, and also this week, Clark wanted to announce his candidacy for the 2020 presidential race, even though he's still got
many years.
What, 14?
16.
Yeah, okay.
If it's 16
Adam, are
years...
you announcing your candidacy?
Okay, yeah, never mind.
Well, I guess if he ran as vice president, I don't know if he's just for vice president.
I don't think it's stated.
So technically, let's...
Well, what's interesting, it's run for office. Is it run? See, now we're thinking about this. We need to see what the Constitution says. Is it to hold office you need to be that age?
No, to be president, you got to be...
This week in Constitution talk.
Right. Yeah, I don't know.
Anyway, speaking of Constitution talk, Mr. Maya, how are you?
So go ahead, Maya.
Oh, was it me? I didn't hear. I didn't hear who he was introducing. Hi, I'm Maya. You can find me on Twitter at Mr. Maya or Instagram at the Mr. Maya, or you can follow my wonderful cat at It's the Jonesy on both of those. And if you're in Utah and you like pro wrestling, come check out UCW Pro Wrestling. I'm doing stuff with them at the moment, and you can find them on YouTube.
On the YouTubes?
Yep. You might even... I haven't looked, but their most recent show, I did commentary for the second half of the show for the first time, and it was a little terrifying, and I wasn't great, but it wasn't awful, so it was fun.
A pro wrestler commentator. That sounds like a new job title for you.
It might be. Oh, is that Bruce, or is that your kitty?
That's Bruce.
Hi, Bruce.
Yo.
No, my cat randomly decided to bite me during the last episode.
Your cat, when you weren't on the mic before we started recording last episode, was being super talkative.
Sure, letting the cat's presence
be known. That's true. Speaking of letting their presence be known, we have Mr. Adam.
Hey guys, this is Adam from Big Shiny Robot. Still figuring out things on the Board to Sell podcast with Andy Wilson.
Hi, Andy.
Andy.
Hi, Andy.
And as we mentioned before, over at Cinema Queens with our good friend Chris.
Hey, Chris.
Hey! And of course, curating our Grindr stuff and Tights with a Z account.
Tights.
Tights.
Because Utah, so it's got to have the double Z.
And it's also like there's a silent Q in there somewhere.
For a while, the affectation of a lowercase g in front of my name, and it was silent because I was.
There they are.
Hey.
We're back.
Oh, did you lose us?
Yeah, we
We'll
did.
report that later.
So I don't know. We missed all that, and I'm sure there's gonna be a bunch of conversation. Me and Jason be like, "Oh, they're gone. I don't know what's going on."
No, we didn't even notice you guys.
We just
we were just
going on.
bullshitting about our own bullshit.
You guys had to review the book.
That's right.
Yeah.
Rumble. Okay. Well, and hey, I'm Brian. I'm a sound designer based in Southern California, and doing some gigs around the valley. And I just got offered a gig for Google that I can't take, which is kind of a bummer.
Nobody's onto.
The Googles, we get you're popular.
Yeah, super duper popular. So this week is Becky Cloonan's By Chance or Providence, a collection of short stories by Becky Cloonan and illustrated by Becky Cloonan with
We get it. She's talented.
I think coloring. She's also known for she did with Gerard Way the
Fabulous.
the Fabulous Killjoys. That's where I first became familiar with her. She's also done some Batman stuff, right, Todd?
Yeah, she was the first female artist to be drawing Batman on the main titles.
Correct. So
Let me look at something. I believe way back when the first thing I ever read that she did was a book. She drew it. I don't think she wrote it. It was a book for Vertigo called American Virgin, I want to say is the name of it. I'm looking it up. But...
She also did Gotham
Okay.
Academy, which is
Oh, yeah.
Quite
Gotham
great.
Academy.
I like Gotham Academy.
the
That's
Gotham
fun.
Academy is the Becky Cloonan thing.
Well, cool. So Todd, what is the myification of this week's book?
Medieval Macabre.
Anthology.
Medieval Macabre.
Yep.
It also says horror fiction / romance.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's what the last of the book that says. Okay, well, so we're going to try this in a different order because it makes more sense this way. We're going to do votes as to whether or not we believe that it's worth you, our dear listeners, hard-earned time, money, and effort to hunt this book down and give it a read. Mr. Adam, what is your vote?
Yes.
Mr. Todd.
Uh-huh.
Mr. Jason.
I say yes.
I also say yes, and Mr. Maya.
I'm also going to vote yes.
Okay, so we have 4 or 5 votes of yes. So, since we all vote that you should actually give this a read, we should also give you some drinking games and things like that to go along with it. So, for drinking games, what is your rule, Mr. Jason?
My rule is eyes so wide. Anytime a character's eyes are wide in shock or fear, take a drink.
Okay. Mine is called Sharp and Stabby. Every time there's a sword in a scene, take a drink. Mr. Todd, what is your drinking game rule?
Mine's called The Delayed Thesis. So every time the relationships are revealed at the end, take a gulp.
Okay. And Mr. Maya.
Mine is called Is Someone There? Basically, anytime someone has the feeling that they're being watched.
Okay. And Mr. Adam.
Mine is the Morgan Freeman. Every time there's a page with just narration and no dialogue.
There we go. Cool. Then, of course, if we have drinking games and we all say that we should vote it, then we also need music for you to play in the background. I'm going to go with Over the Hills and Far Away by Led Zeppelin. Mr. Adam, what is your song for the playlist?
I'm going with Enter Sandman by Metallica.
Ooh. Mr. Jason.
My Moon, My Man by Feist.
Okay. Mr. Maya.
I'm going to stick with my is there the theme of a drinking game and say, is there anybody out there by Pink Floyd?
Okay.
Because
And Mr. Todd.
Mine is the Static X remix of Nine Inch Nails' Closer. It takes the
Okay.
song and it makes it a bit crunchier and harder and moodier.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, then, of course, we have drinking game rules. We have playlists. We also need to give you some cocktails to drink along with this book. Mr. Adam, what is your cocktail?
So mine is called the Silt of the Sea. What you do is you take 1 or 2 scoops of vanilla ice cream, 2 ounces of coffee liqueur, 1 ounce of Irish whiskey, 4 ounces of hot espresso, and then toasted almonds and chocolate chips to garnish. You put the ice cream in a bowl, You top with the alcohols, and then you cover it with a hot espresso, and you garnish with the almonds and chocolate chips.
That sounds delicious.
Yeah, it really does. Cool. Mr. Jason.
Mine is called the Sweet Kiss Goodbye. Take a half cup of ice, 2 tablespoons of raspberry jam, 2 tablespoons of bourbon, 1 tablespoon of triple sec, and 2 to 3 tablespoons of orange juice, a couple orange slices, and a splash of club soda. You want to add the ice, the jam, bourbon, triple sec, and orange juice into a shaker and shake vigorously for 15 seconds. Pour that into your serving glass with a few ice cubes on top, it off with a splash of club soda, and then garnish with some orange slices and enjoy.
Nice.
Awesome. Mr. Maya.
Mine is called The Deep Blue Sea and kind of ties into the third story in this book. It's 2.5 ounces of vodka, 1 ounce of blue curacao, 1 ounce of white cranberry juice, a half ounce of fresh lime juice, and 3 to 4 dashes of orange bitters. Add all the ingredients to a cocktail shaker filled with ice. Shake it well and strain into a lowball glass over ice and garnish with a cherry. And if you want, add some drops of red food coloring for blood.
Cool. Mr. Todd.
Mine's called the macabre drink. It's 2 ounces of orange juice and 2 ounces of black vodka. So what you want to do is take your martini glass and fill the bottom half of the glass with your orange juice. Then you want to add the black vodka, you need to pour it over the back of a spoon and into the glass to help achieve a layered look on top of the juice. And then sip and enjoy. So it's a screwdriver in a little black dress.
That sounds like a great album title. And mine is called The Way of the Sword. You take 1.5 ounces of 12-year-old Japanese whiskey. I'm assuming regular whiskey would work as well. 3/4 of an ounce of sweet vermouth. 1/2 ounce of Cynar, I believe, Cynar. Cynar. 1/4 ounce of ruby port and 1 large cube of ice and 1 orange twist. In a mixing glass, combine the whiskey, the vermouth, the Cynar, and the port. Fill the glass with ice, stir, and strain into a chilled double rocks glass over a large ice cube. Pinch the orange and twist over the drink. And there you have it. I think that's everybody, correct?
Yep, I think so.
Okay, cool. Does anybody have any final warnings before we let people go up and read this book?
So if you listened last week, don't read these books back to back because you will start to get them confused.
They're very similar.
They are very similar. They're both collections of short stories. This one, I believe, is only 3 short stories.
Correct.
Yes, this one is a very quick read.
This one is super quick.
If you get this in trade format, like the last fourth of the book is like all sketches and illustration, which are pretty to look at. But if you're just reading the story, you're going to blow through it pretty quick.
Yes, correct. But cool. Then I think so the 3 short stories in here are Wolves, the Mire, and Demeter are the names of the 3 short stories here. Outside of that, I think we'll let you go and read this book, and we will see you on the flip side.
While we take a break, here is a message from one of our fellow Hello Sweetie Network podcasts.
Hi, everybody. This is Matt.
And I'm Trevor. We're the co-hosts of the Nighthawks podcast, a movie podcast for people who like to stay up late.
We've just joined the Hello Sweetie Podcast Network, expanding our podcast empire and bringing the world to its knees.
Take a seat in the Nighthawks diner with us. We're going to talk to you about movies.
We've got new movies, old movies, movies we love, movies nobody loves.
You can find us on Stitcher, iTunes, and at nighthawkspodcast.com.
Hey, that was pretty good. Do you think they'll listen?
The good ones always do.
So we'll start out with the wolf, or wolves. It's about a guy who's out there hunting wolves, and he's talking about this woman that he loves, and he sees in the eyes of this wolf like a similarity between the woman that he loves and this wolf. He fights and ends up killing the wolf. He brings the body back to the castle and leaves it there and takes off, and then he's cursed. And you get the impression that the werewolf was the woman, I believe. Am I the only one who's interpreting that?
That's what I felt.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm not crazy. Because it's not explicitly said, but that's what I got the vibe of that. So basically he ended up having to kill this woman who, and the king sent him out on this mission because he basically made him kill his lover because the king was being a dick. Cool. So who is doing, I think it's Adam is doing the next one?
Yeah, so for the Mire, it's like they're on a battlefield. There's this guy named Sir Owain. He calls this young squire named Aiden, and he's like, "Hey, I got this letter. I need you to take it to Castle Greyskull, Blackwood."
I'm kidding.
But Aiden's pissed because he promised he would fight in this battle, and he's like, "Well, as long as you get back in time, you can." So basically, he goes to the forest, and there's all kinds of creepy crawlies out there. He's chased by like this zombie rider on a horse. He finally gets to the castle, goes in there, and he sees a picture on the wall of like this woman and this guy. Isn't this the same people from the first story? Isn't this the guy and the woman he killed?
No.
Okay, that's kind of what I got out of it. So maybe I just didn't love it. So he goes through, goes all the way to the top, and he opens up this curtain, and there's like this dead woman, the woman from the portrait in the sitting in the bed, and he opens his letter up, he reads it. Battle's always for him, and then we basically find out that then was it Sir Owen then who was married to her or like fell in love with her? I got mixed up on this. I was looking at a completely different way.
Sir Owen was a knight who got lost in the woods while this woman's husband or king or whatever was out hunting. And so Sir Owen ended up staying with her at the castle for several months and fell in love with her and then had to leave, but he actually also left her pregnant. And when she gave birth, her husband didn't want the baby around, so the baby was sent off to Sir Owen to raise as his squire, and now he's just told him that he was his son. Yeah.
And then basically this letter saying that, and then we find out that Sir Owen actually died in the battlefield, and that his last request is for Owen to come find him, or Aiden to come find him and bury his body.
Yep.
See, for some reason I thought that was linked to the first one, where it was like that was the story that we were talking about. Was that's why the king came back and found out they were sleeping together, and that's why you find her with a dagger in her breast was because he had killed her, and that's what he was dropping off. And that's why he was banished. So I really thought those two stories were tied together. So
okay.
And then the third one, Demeter, I believe that's Maya's doing that one?
Yeah, I'm going to do a shitty job because...
do it!
So we have Anna and... What's the guy's name?
Colin.
Is it Colin? Yeah, Anna and Colin, they wake up and Colin's like, tell me about the first time we met. And she tells him, he's like, no, the real first time. And and I've totally blanked this story out.
So anyways, I think what it was is that he's a fisherman or whatever, he's out at sea, there's a big storm, he washes up on shore, and they're all happy, but then you find out that there's this weird creature going shh, becomes like stalking at her window, and only she can really see him, and we find out that what actually happened was that when he washed up on shore, oh my God, he was dead, and so she made a deal with the devil, or the ocean, the sea, to bring him back.
Yeah, that's.
And then after a certain amount of time, he would have to return to the depths.
I think it was said like 7 drops of blood for 7 years or something.
Or 7 months.
7 months.
Yeah. Or 7 months.
Yeah. And so at the very end of it, to placate the sea, he goes back into the water and then drifts down to the very bottom, and you see him there as a corpse.
And then he shows up to, is it her daughter?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, her daughter's down playing by the ocean, and he shows up, and he's like, shh.
Yes.
Well, what are people's thoughts?
I'll jump in first. So I think it's similar to last week in that the stories have a different level of, to me, either completion or efficacy. As much as I did enjoy the book as a whole, I think the final story is the one that's most unclear in some of the character emotions or motivations. Obviously, she wants to bring her lover, her husband, back from the dead, but at the very end, it's unclear why he is so upset with her. I don't know if anyone else has a clear reason why.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Yeah. Okay. So that was confusing for me. It wasn't clear also what significance this sort of fur hooded coat that he finds holds for him, because he finds it locked away in a trunk next to their bed, and it kind of reminds him of the fact that he used to be dead or was dead after that crash, and it suddenly clicks for him, but it doesn't really click for the reader. Up until that point, it's to me, it's a well-told story of a woman and her grief, and not fully telling her husband what he's been through, and he also can't remember. So it's this weird, constant fear that she lives in, even though she's trying to be happy. I did appreciate it for that. What did you guys think of that story in particular?
Well, what I got out of it as far as why he's upset was because from what my understanding is, I'm flipping through it again because again these all kind of ran together. Was that the reason at the beginning when he tell me about the first time he fell in love is because when he came back, one of the things he completely lost was his memories. So she's having to remind him over and over again. So when he finds that trunk, that's I think was the clothes he was in when she found him, and that's when they came flooding back, and he realized that even though he got to be with her, she still stole that from him, and I think that's why he was upset because it's kind of like. With Pet Sematary, some things are better off staying dead, kind of thing.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
But see, I'm still sticking with my thesis that the first two stories are linked because it just for me it makes sense, and that's what made it more of an impactful thing is that there's one continuing story of both tragedies, and how it played out. But yeah, I liked them. It's like last week was interesting because last week the stories were completely disparate and they didn't really they didn't tie together whatsoever. And this one Well, the one from last weekend felt like more Edgar Allan Poe flowing through it. This was just, again, with my thing that it was two distinct different stories, or three, depending on how you look at it. And it didn't, for me, work quite as well as Through the Woods. That being said, I still had a lot of fun with it. But the Through the Woods had, the Edgar Allan Poe, the Brothers Grimm fairy tales, kind of blood running through it. And this one didn't quite have that. It's still really enjoyable. I still liked it a lot. It's just, I read Through the Woods second. And I'm glad I did because if I would have read this Through the Woods first and then read this one, I probably wouldn't have enjoyed it as much.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I do feel like we recorded two of these episodes back to back just because of the necessity and just scheduling and that kind of stuff.
Baseball.
But it is almost a little
Inside baseball.
That's true. But it's a little unfortunate to have read these both back to back because I think it may lead to an unfair comparison between the two of them. I think that last week's book, I think, is definitely better, but I think that this one still has some interesting things in it. I did like the wolf story. This idea that he's out, killing his lover, but he sort of realizes it at the last minute, but then also realizes that this is what he has to do. And that he's been set up and that kind of stuff. So I kind of did like that one quite a bit. I do like the art quite a bit in this book.
Yes.
I think that's probably one of the shining features of this, which is probably a reason why the last quarter of the book is all sketch pad and all sorts of stuff, because the art I think is what really shines here. Not to say that she's not a good writer, but I think that
she's no slouch when it comes to the art.
Yeah, for sure. So, Mr. Todd, what are your thoughts?
I really enjoy these three. I really like how it started off with the wolf story and whatnot, and it's the with the art, the comparison of the eyes. So he's got the eyes of his lover asking him not to go. He's like, I've got to go. It's what I do. And as he goes through and he's killing the wolf and he sees the eyes, and the eyes are the same, and he realizes what's going on and how he's been duped, but knowingly duped as it's going for, and on how there is no victory there. This is what he does, and he's just like, I killer of wolves, keep people safe, and I killed my lover, and who's safe? And I really enjoyed that. And then when you've got the Mire of the story of this squire to this knight, and the knight sends him off. And you can kind of guess that on what's going on, and it comes back again. And yet at the same time, it's a bit of a classic of the men can't show their feelings, and yet at the same time imparts all of the feelings as it's going for. So it was very much a keep calm and carry on, and I've done this to save you because you mean everything to me, even if you don't know it. And I found that to be really sweet and sad at the same time, because he's like, I sent you away and you don't have a chance to say goodbye, but I get to. And it's the hardest thing is the lack of, he knew he was going to die and do it, and he didn't have to say goodbye, but he now knows his squire/son is coming. He's like, now you're going to have to bury me and deal with the weight of everything that you knew and just learned and had no idea of while I was alive. And that seems so sad and horrific in its own way.
Well, also the fact that he sent him away is also him protecting his son and keeping his son out of battle as well.
Yeah, he did protect him, and you totally get it, but the squire's like, oh, that was my dad the whole time. What about X, Y, Z, and J? And, it just completely changes the tone, and he never has a chance to. Here's this man he knew, and he found out this man is his dad, but he never talked to his dad as he knew it, which is really sad. So,
yeah. So we've had a couple of weeks of very uplifting books.
It is a bit of horror and whatnot. Well, what's interesting about this, though, is it's very much like the genre of which it's in. It's gothic, it's macabre. We've read a lot of uplifting books in the past as well, but I think it did that very well. It's just the with few words spoken and narrated is sure imparted a whole lot of meaning and emotion and heaviness, and that's what I really enjoyed about it. And the mire was good too. The mire got. Would you say the mire got lost in the mire a little bit?
Get the fuck out of my house.
No, it's still not nearly half as bad as yours from last week. Not nearly half as bad, oh boy. But
No, Brian's the po' boy.
I will say,
From a Poe family.
oh boy.
yeah,
Anyway, I will say one other part that I appreciated on the with the Mire. The first time I read it, it was a little confusing because the text boxes of the captions didn't always relate to exactly what was happening in the panel, so I was a bit confused. And then when you read it the second time, you realize not only is is Sir Owen actually speaking to the kid, but he's actually the color of the background on those text captions actually changes halfway through. So half of it is the letter itself, and the other half are just his thoughts that he is thinking and hopes to convey to his son. And I thought that was actually something that got better for me reading it a second time.
yeah. So I really think that the middle story it's quite sad and it's touching in so many ways. So, and you have the sadness of the wolf story of him killing his lover. You have the sadness of a son losing the father he didn't know he had. And in the mire, you have the sadness of the woman who has made a deal. It's like, I can get my lover back, but just for such a short time. And it's really kind of a delayed. It's like, is this better or not? And then, but she did get a child out of it, but is the child now going to be reclaimed back from with that very deal? And that's an interesting question. So, yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Adam, I haven't heard a whole ton from you.
You guys have kind of already summed up everything I was thinking. And actually, going back and reading the middle one again, yeah, it is not connected to the first one. But I guess, again, when I was reading it the first time, it seemed like a logical jump to connect to. Yeah. You guys already said everything I wanted to say. So,
Was anybody else have any other thoughts?
Just the art really does stand out to me as well. I mean, I especially appreciated the way that the characters touched and embraced one another. I think that level of connection or emotions really comes through in that.
And as you're watching with the art, the way there's definitely traditional panels per se, but the way they use the trees for framing and the flowing, and as you watch this, and it feels very, there's an organic feel to it that's really quite nice. And sometimes you look at some artists where they're playing with the format and the layout. It's like, oh, that's really cool, but how do I read this? Can get in the way. And this one, it says, oh, as you read it naturally, then you look back, it's like, oh, I see what she did there. That's really cool. And I felt that more often than not with some of those frames as she did. And it wasn't on every page or anything like that. But when she did do it, you're like, oh, that was done really well. That's great.
Yeah.
So I want to check this out now. I'm looking up some other Becky Cloonan stuff. She did the first 3 issues of the 2012 Conan series with Brian Wood. I want to check that out.
Yeah. Did she also do Local with Brian Wood, I want to say? Or Channel Zero? I think it was Channel Zero she did with Brian Wood. Let's see how Todd did.
Zero.
Channel Zero.
No, just Zero. Zero number 1 from Image.
Yeah. Channel Zero is the sci-fi show.
All right.
Cool.
Anyway,
anybody else have any thoughts? Okay.
There we are.
No, we're good.
if you want to read something that'll make you feel better about your life, read it.
You read this and then you do it.
Cool. Well, then let's jump into grades for self-contained. What is your grade, Mr. Adam?
I'm going to go with an A. I mean, it's 3 short stories. They all tell 3 complete stories as the last one did. And just, it's once and you're done.
Cool. Mr. Todd.
I'm going to give this an A. I mean, it was really well done. Yeah.
Cool. Mr. Maya.
I'm also at an A for self-contained. None of the 3 stories were open-ended, so that's an A.
Cool. Mr. Jason.
Also A.
And I will also sit there with an A. For writing for Becky Cloonan, what is your grade, Mr. Todd?
No, I'm giving it an A-. I really enjoyed these 3 stories going through that, and they were quite satisfying. And it was one of those things, too, as you look at it and think about it and then you read it again, there's a lot there that's worth coming back to, again, by all means. So, yeah, A-.
Cool. Mr. Adam.
I'm gonna go with B+. Like I said, it was enjoyable. It was fun to read. I really liked, a lot of the stuff Todd brought up about the way that, the love of a father for his son, when you sacrifice for that. And it was nowhere near, say, as creepy as the first book, but it had interesting stories. And even though my drinking game was with a narration and no dialogue, there was a lot to be told based just on the artwork and the action happening without a lot of dialogue needed between some of the characters. It was very much for all 3 of these, it was a personal journey by one person, kind of surrounded by other people who had some input in what's going on, but it really was about, the one man, the one boy, and the one woman's journey.
Yeah.
Nice, yeah.
Mr. Jason.
Mine is also a B+. I very much enjoyed this, but I just knocked it down just a little bit, just for some lack of clarity issues. In the 3rd story in particular, but I think that the first one could have been a little bit more clear in that connection. Maybe it could have been used or done with a more clear panel to show that the eyes of the wolf were the eyes of the woman, but that's a small quibble.
Okay. I will also go with a B for lots of similar reasons have been said. And then Mr. Maya, have we gotten your grade yet?
Nope, not yet, but I am also at a B. We'll say a B. I enjoyed it. I thought it was well written, but it wasn't my favorite thing that I've read. So, I'm going to get a B.
Cool. For art for Becky Cloonan and colorist by Lee Loughridge. What is your grade, Mr. Maya?
It's an A. Becky Cloonan, I don't think knows how to draw anything less than an A. So yeah, it's beautiful, especially even though it's not part of the story. Flipping through the illustrations and concept stuff in the back, you can tell she put a lot of her heart and soul into this book, and it's an A.
Mr. Todd.
What was that?
Sorry, Mr. Todd.
There we go.
Funny Books and Firewater. We're professional.
Yes. Say it like you mean it. So.
I mean it, Mr. Todd.
I'm going to give this A- as well. There's a more muted tone to this, and it had a bit of a... the woods here felt much less menacing as a theme compared to last week's book, by all means. But I really enjoyed it. Yeah, it's the art was gorgeous. It felt really naturalistic to it. The figures were drawn, the physique and the figures. I mean, it was just done wonderfully well. So yeah, A-.
Cool. I'm going to go with an A. I think the art is what really shines out here. Mr. Adam.
A as well. It's the best part of the book. And every story, even though people are drawn kind of the same way, everyone feels different from the way you play with the blues and the bright colors in the last one. You've got the yellows and everything in the first one, and then kind of the second one was a little bit muted. Like you can just, it's overall there's thrown under the shadow of war, and then finding out that basically that Aiden is his son. The art's definitely amazing. So easy A.
Cool. Mr. Chase, do we your grade?
Not yet. So art is an A for me as well. It's evocative, it's moody, it's sexy at times. And just like Maya was saying, sketching or flipping through the sketches at the end of the trade paperback is just, it's really, really nice to appreciate.
Cool. Yeah. Cool. So then for overall grades, I am going to go with a B+. I think the art is really what sings. The writing is what, not to say the writing is bad, it's just what takes it down just a little bit for me. Mr. Todd.
I'm going to give this A- again. I think with the material what they were going for, it was just done really, really, really well. She did a great job. A-.
Okay. Mr. Adam.
B plus as well as you are, just because I think the writing's not quite as good as what we did last week. But that said, this is one that you can go through and you can get more out of it each time. So I pretty much read through it again while we were recording, and because I wanted to see if the first two were linked. That was kind of the main thing I wanted to go back and see. But again, it is, it's a, even though this is kind of like the fantasy realm of what's going on, you are getting, again, three very personal stories about a man, a boy, and a woman, and I think it's really cool how they focused on that.
Yeah.
Mr. Maya.
I'm at a B plus as well. I absolutely love the art, and I enjoyed the stories, but like I said before, they weren't like my super favorite stories. So just because of that, I'm gonna give it a B plus.
Okay, and Mr. Todd.
I think you mean Mr. Jason.
Mr. Jason, I'm sorry, Mr. Jason.
B plus for me. I did enjoy it, but I think I'll be more excited for a story that is a bit more long form than just these three little snippets.
Okay, so that gives us a GPA of 3.38, which is just above a B plus. So that seems pretty average. Honestly,
A minus minus.
Huh?
A minus minus.
A minus minus. Cool. Next week we are going to be reading Pretty Deadly by Kelly Sue DeConnick, also of the writer of Bitch Planet.
And she's the who made the modern Captain Marvel.
Correct.
And who's in Captain Marvel?
She is in Captain Marvel as well. Yeah.
For like half a second.
Yeah.
Yep. So that's what we'll be reading next week. Who has recommendations?
I got one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do it.
Last night I started reading Monstrous.
I've heard that book. I started that too, like a month ago.
Mr. Todd.
Another Becky Cloonan work, but we said earlier, but it's a whole lot of fun. It's Gotham Academy, so it's a little private prep school within Gotham that sometimes Batman shows up in.
Mr. Maya.
Go. By the time you hear this, the finale will have aired and it will have ended. But go watch the silliness that is Gotham. The season, they just don't give a fuck anymore, and it's awesome.
Well, then that will do it for this week. Thanks for joining us, and join us next week for Pretty Deadly by Kelly Sue DeConnick as we continue our month of women writers. Thanks and so long, and thanks for all the fishes. Bye.
Thank you for joining us. Please rate us on whatever service you listen on. And remember, at least we're not cinema queens.